You often become experts by making mistakes. So if that's the measure of an expert. Anyways, how many of you guys have ever been to a foreign country before? Canada does not count. No, I'm just joking. For our Canadian listeners who are watching via live stream, we love you, bless you. Thank you for being the 51st state. Anyways, so that was a joke. We don't want to offend our Canadian friends, all 200 of them. So I'm just joking. Just everyone relax. Everyone take a deep breath. All right, you good? Okay, anyways, has anyone ever been to a foreign country? I want you to raise your hand. That speaks a different language than American. Okay? Some of you are like, wait, don't we speak English? Most of the other English-speaking countries don't acknowledge what we speak as English. But anyways, I remember the first time I ever left America. I was 25 years old or so, and I was on my way to Africa for my first time in Africa, which I love Africa. And we had a layover in Paris. Has anyone ever been to Paris before? It's great. I've been to the airport, and it's a great airport. So, and I get there, we'd been flying from New York overnight, and we get there in the morning, and it's still like nighttime in my time, but it's, so I get there, and I'm starving, and I'm so hungry. And so I try to go to the airport, and I'm trying to find something to eat. And I don't speak much French at all. I can say very few things. Croissant, right? I've been to Au Bon Pain before and got a muffin. Some of you are like, Au Bon Pain, what's that? So you don't speak French. It's a bakery at the mall. But anyways, so I get to this place and there's this young girl standing behind the counter. I'm 25. She's probably my age or so. And I'm like, okay, what can I get? I look at the menu. It doesn't have familiar things like omelet. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? So I'm like, okay, I want to order a sandwich. Because sandwiches are like universal, right? So I get there, and now I'm starting to get nervous, though. So I'm like, okay, I don't know the word for sandwich, but I'm going to break it down into the parts. So I'm like, so I start with this. Ready? Bonjour. Good start, right? And I actually do try to say it with a better accent than that, So I'm like, bonjour. She's like, bonjour. Comment ça va? Oh, I know that one. She's getting tricky. I'm like, oh, ça va bien. Ça va? She's like, très bien. I'm like, whoa. I'm starting to feel good. Then she says something which I presume is, what do you want? So I'm like, okay, now it's getting real. So I'm like, baguette. And so I got bread, right? And I'm like, ham, jamon. She's nodding. I'm like, cheese. So I'm like, I know it's not queso. So I'm like, fromage. And I'm like, no joke, I'm like starting to sweat. And I'm like, tomato, like I actually say the words in French, and I'm like, I get through, and I'm finally like, I order it in mayo, I get all the parts down, like every component, right? Which is different than like showing up at Subway and you're like, can I get, the spicy Italian, right? I wish it was that easy. But anyways, so I list all the parts that I want. And I'm like every part of French that I'm thinking of, I'm going through. And then I get done. And no joke, the girl looks at me and she smiles. And in perfect English, she said, so you want a ham and cheese sandwich? Thanks. Yes. Thanks for that. You speak English, obviously. If you've ever been in those moments, you understand that often heart connection can either be established or ruined by communication. We're talking about getting closer. And to start this series, we really understand that the experts in relationships have narrowed down the key to healthy relationships, or key to relationships, is communication. Communication is the key to establishing relationships. And healthy communication, we can put that up there, is the key to healthy relationships. I've never seen anyone have a pattern of healthy relationships in their life without the pattern of healthy communication being established in their life and in their relationships. Have you ever seen people with healthy relationships? Yeah, most hands aren't up. No, I've never seen that. You know why? Because healthy communication is at the core of getting closer. And so tonight we want to dive into this a little bit, what is looking at healthy communication. So we're going to put a couple verses on there. We're going to break it down, and then I want to share with you a tool that may help us to develop one part of healthy communication. The first one is this. In Ephesians 4:29, Paul writes to this church in Ephesians, and he says, "Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth." That word corrupt can be translated in some translation as don't let any filthy language come out of your mouth or dirty words come out of your mouth. And that's not a great translation, although it's part of it. But it says, no, let no corrupt word come out of your mouth. If we think of corruption as something that's been tainted, something that's not right. If there's something corrupt happens to your computer or your phone, you know that something that wasn't meant to be there is now showing up and messing things up. Am I right? And so Paul's writing, he goes, let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth. But then he continues. So don't do this, but do this. But what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to your hearers. But what is good for necessary edification? Everyone say necessary edification. I love that. I love that translation of this, what's necessary, but only what is good. Let nothing corrupt come out of your mouth, because that's not good, but only what is good, and not just good for you, but good for necessary edification. In other words, Paul is identifying that when you're conversing, when you're in communication with people, don't let corruption come out of you, but share what is good for the necessary edification. In other words, he's saying when you're talking with people, you're actually not just having a personal interaction. You're actually having an opportunity, or you're having a soul-to-soul connection. And what comes out of your mouth can be necessary edification. And if it's necessary, that means we have a need. And every one of us, our souls has a need to be fed. All right? Anyone ever come in contact with people when they speak to you, just feel fed? You feel full? You feel life coming over you? Probably they're not starting with corrupt words coming out of their mouth. What's coming out of their mouth is good for the necessary part of feeding your soul. The words coming out, and the life coming out, the tone coming out is coming out. And I love how Paul continues, and I love this translation of it because it captures the heart of the essence of what Paul's saying. He says that it may impart grace to the hearers. Love that. The fact is that our words that we use, the communication that we have with others, can either breed corruption over people, which doesn't have a healthy byproduct, or we can speak words of life and health. And in fact, in doing that, sharing the heart of God, that it actually imparts grace to each other. That there's something of a transaction that takes place, that when we speak in the way that God's called us to speak, then when I speak to you, hopefully life comes out, that actually you're receiving, I'm imparting grace to your soul. And if you do the same, that's amazing. How many of you would love to have life-giving conversations daily like that? Okay, me too. And that if we're going to get closer, it's a lot easier when we're not speaking corrupt words to each other, when we're speaking words that impart grace and life to each other in that way. So Paul writes that to the church in Ephesians. You know why I think he writes that to the church in Ephesians? Man, my slides got all messed up. It's no one's fault except for my own. This is where someone's going to go, okay, boomer. All right, so Paul takes it up a notch and let's go to the next passage in Colossians. This is Paul writing to the church in the city of Colossae in 4:6. He says this, let your conversation be gracious. Sound familiar? Why is he writing that? Because the people in Colossae have a problem with this too. So people in Ephesus, people in Colossae have a problem with this. Why? Because humans have a problem with this. If Paul was writing a letter to Sanctuary, somewhere in this letter it would say like, hey guys, when you're talking, be gracious. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive so that you will have the right response for everyone. Paul's taking it up a notch. He said, let your conversations be not only impart grace, but let the conversations themselves be gracious and attractive. And I love that because he gives an answer. He says, so that you will have a right response for everyone. Other translations say this, so that you may be able to answer everyone who asks you. So Paul is actually saying here, what is the answer that he's talking about? He's saying that when people are looking for the answer that we have, for the hope that we have, for the love that we have, for the life that we have, we can say, it's Jesus. It's Jesus. And Paul's starting to say that maybe the first thing that attracts people to a Jesus in us is the words coming out of us. May our words be so different than the culture around us that people are going, what is your deal? Because they feel the grace that's coming off of us. If healthy communication is the key to healthy relationships, where do we get that kind of healthy communication that leads to healthy relationships? Well, in fact, we learn healthy relationships and healthy communication from others in our life. We were meant to learn it first to the people closest with us, to our parents, to our siblings, to our extended family. The problem is, and then friends at school and other environments that we're in, we pick up on healthy relationships and healthy communication by healthy environments around us, by watching other people who communicate in a healthy way. The problem is, I don't know about you, but as I look around our world and our culture and our family systems and our schools and our neighborhoods and what's on TV, we live in a healthy communication deficit. Am I right? If we learn this stuff from our environment, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. And so if we're going to take the step of getting closer to each other, and healthy communication helps establish healthy relationships, and we understand that we live in a culture that doesn't model healthy relationships or healthy communication, then where are we going to learn this stuff? Well, I want to share with you one tool that has been a huge help to me in understanding that to get to the ultimate relationships of closeness that we were created to have, how do we establish those things? This is not an exhaustive talk on communication in relationships. That would be a lot longer than the average message, maybe about as long as the average Kevin message, but we're not going there tonight, all right? So we're gonna look at a tool that has been really helpful to me in this way and even helping other people understand. And so we're gonna look at this tool. If you can put the next slide up there. We're gonna look at levels of communication. We're gonna look at 5 levels of communication tonight. This comes from a guy named Gary Smalley, and it's really important because we know this, but relationships require trust, right? If you don't trust someone, you can't have a healthy relationship with them. All relationships require trust. Trust requires risk. Trust requires risk because, and communication helps with establish this because you're asking the questions, can I trust you with parts of me? Communication and conversation helps determine whether you're a trustworthy person with what I'm going to share with you, because communication is part of sharing at every level, and we're going to look through that. But every level of communication becomes an opportunity to either build or lose trust with people. We have a chance to either impart grace or lose grace in that situation. And so as we walk through this stuff, I want you to understand that every single level is an opportunity to establish trust or have it broken, to impart grace or not. Every level. Everyone understand that? Okay. So let's look at the 5 levels of communication. We're going to go through these real quickly together. There's a guy named Gary Smalley. Oh, by the way, this is a throw-off statement. Thank you for going back. Can we go back one more? Ready? Just in case you're wondering, social media is not a conversation. At best, it gives some information or inspiration, but it is not a conversation. It is not an effective tool for establishing trust and building healthy relationship. Everyone understand that? Okay. You know, it's interesting because most people will say that, but most people try to continue to communicate conversational things on social media. And then when people respond in an unconversational way, right? So much so that most of us, you know, if I did what we call a negativity fast a couple years ago, which really meant I just got off social media because it was a real help. Anyways, that was throwaway. Let's go. 5 levels of conversation. Let's do it. Ready? First one. Cliches and pleasantries. This is the first level of communication with that. Everyone say pleasantries. I'm having a problem. I can't change my slides, which means I don't have notes, but that's all right. I got it? All right, we'll see. Okay, cliches and pleasantries. This is the first level of conversation with people have. You know, cliches such as, give me one that starts a conversation, a cliche. That's the weather like, right? You can start a conversation with anyone about the weather. You want to know why? Because there's always weather. And in New England, it changes regularly, right? You can see someone in the morning and in the afternoon and still have a conversation about weather because it's changed 3 times. And so that's a starting point because everyone can connect on that level. So cliches are starting point conversations in which you're approaching people, and pleasantries. Can I tell you, this is a powerful part of healthy communication that leads to healthy relationships. You ready? Hi, how are you? You see that? First of all, I had eye contact with Andres. Now, part of that is Andres is an incredibly good-looking guy. So when I speak to him, like, I'm just drawn to, you know, his amazing handsomeness. But part of it is if I want to converse with Andres, it starts with eye communication. It's a totally different thing if I'm talking to Andres and I'm like, hi, how you doing? What am I communicating? I don't think he matters. And level 1 conversation may not be the ultimate of deepness, but it's the starting point where we can, as a friend has said this, where I acknowledge his humanity. I acknowledge that God has created him, that he matters, that he's worth my eye focus and attention. And even though I have this not life-changing statement that's transforming his life, where I go, hi, how are you? He's not walking away. You should have met this guy. He said, hi, how are you? But at the same time, it's a place where we can establish trust, where I can impart grace. How's your day going? I remember the first time when we moved to Australia, I went to a gas station and paid for my gas. And in Australia, you have to pay inside. You can't pay at the pump. It's not that they don't have the technology, but they want you to buy things inside, right? Makes sense. So I walk in to pay for my thing. And I just come from Connecticut. I grew up in the Northeast. I understand how, you know, things work. And I walk in and I'm giving him my credit card to pay for my gas. And I'm like, pump 3. And he goes, how's your day going? And I look behind me to see who he was talking to. Because I grew up in New England, right? And the guy at the gas station talks to you, you're like, where's my wallet, keys? Like, someone pickpocketing, what's going on here? Like, he must be talking to someone he knows. Why? Because in our culture, it's weird to have a stranger actually say, how's your day going? Am I right? Remember it happened at a grocery store too. How's your week going? Week? I'm I don't even know how my day's going. You're asking me about my week now. Like, but it's a point of conversation. It's pleasantries. I have sometimes, I won't say which one of my children, but one of them, the male one. So anyways, he sometimes calls me and he'll be like, hey, Dad, can you do this for me? And I'm like, hey, how you doing, Noah? How's it going? How's your day been? And I'm going to pleasantries. And he jokes, he goes, oh, yeah, right. And I go, hey, Noah, pleasantries are important because it helps establish a relationship. If you just go to what do you need, this is a problem. This is a transaction, not a conversation. My wife works in retail, and she can tell you that not only does it work to greet people when they walk in the store beyond, welcome to the Gap, but to actually say, hey, how are you? I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just greeting you as you walk in here because you're a person, not just a customer. And it's interesting that Christians, we often find it the most difficult to greet strangers, to give people time of day because we're like, oh, we're going to deep conversation. And our neighbors go, you don't even know my name. Sometimes we just have to learn that sharing Jesus and establishing healthy communication starts with maybe cliches and pleasantries, but it's an important thing to go, you can trust me that I'm going to look you in the eye and honor you as a person. Is that good? Okay. Second one, cliches and pleasantries. Second one is facts. This is the second level where you go beyond just, hey, how you doing? Hi, facts, right? But you're actually starting to share more parts of yourself. And usually you're sharing facts about yourself. Hey, how are you doing? I'm Kevin. What's your name? Andres. Actually, your full name. Andres Ayala the third. Now that's facts, right? Now that right there, when Andres told me he was the third, I'm like, whoa. That's like American royalty, right? Treadwell, what are you? You're the fourth. That's like Sir Treadwell Lewis the fourth, right? In America. Now, that's just a fact. But then it goes, when you acknowledge that those facts are important, that's a good thing. But when you're just on that facts level, it's saying, I can trust you with the level of facts. So where do you live? Where do you work? What's going on? You know, it's interesting. That sounds so superficial, right? It sounds so surface. And there's so many people who are like, I hate surface conversation. I just want to go deep, and I just can't handle people that stay on the surface. I get part of that. But if you're not good at trusting people with your facts and establishing trust with their facts and be able to talk about those things in a healthy way, my guess is you're not going to be able to get to deeper levels either, because they're not going to trust you with deeper stuff if they can't trust you with the facts that they're sharing. And by the way, it is really, really weird. This is a hint for some of you. When you walk up to someone and you say like, hi, my name's Kevin. Your name is? Matt, I'm talking to you. Yeah, good. Matt's like, I don't trust you with that level of facts at this point, but... And so Matt goes, hi, my name's Matt. I'm like, hey, Matt, I've really been struggling with this sin in my life. It started in my childhood. Like everyone knows that's like, what? It just got weird, right? Why? Because that level of vulnerability and intimacy is weird when you're in that fact stage of life, right? That fact stage of communication, facts of life. Sorry about that. Anyway, that's a whole other talk. But sorry, Carrie's giving me the eye. All right. So everyone get that though. Facts are really important. Because especially, by the way, when you see that person the next time and you're like, hey, how's it going in school? How are your classes doing? They're thinking, you care enough about me that you remembered that I'm actually a student and go to school? I've got relatives who don't even remember that stuff. And you're establishing connection with them because you're valuing who they are. Can I tell you, we had a mailman that we knew his name, where he lived, where he went on vacation, what he enjoyed. We both ride motorcycles. We established, and can I tell you, when we moved from that neighborhood and actually he retired, we hugged. Who hugs their mailman? I do, apparently, right? I've got a new mailman. You know what I know about him? His name. And actually, he's the weekend mailman. I don't see the weekday mailman, so we're not even on that point yet. He gets the wave right now. Anyways, did I change Arnie's life? No. But he remembers us as the customers who cared for him and didn't see him as the guy who dropped off bills. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, we got to fly. All right. Third one, opinions. Third one, opinions. This is going to be called opinions and perspectives. This is where you're not just sharing facts about yourself, but now you're sharing perspectives and opinions. Now, the interesting thing is when you share opinions and perspectives on things, this is where now a relationship can have some level of disagreement or conflict. Does that make sense? Yes. Because now if it's, hey, my name is Kevin, your name is Matt. Matt lives in wherever Matt lives. We don't want to share this around the world, but wherever. I'll do that with Andres apparently, but not with Matt. But anyways, we'll get to he works and he goes to school and da-da-da-da. Those are facts. But then Matt starts sharing his perspective on sports. Whoa. Oh, see? Right? Now, that's a superficial thing, but can I tell you, in New England, that can be a big thing, right? If you're a Red Sox fan and someone's a Yankees fan, right? There can be some point of conflict there, right? If you're a Mets fan, no one cares. But anyways, facts, right? Facts. But this is a place where now I'm trusting, I'm going to take a risk and share an opinion or perspective with you. And how you respond to a difference of opinion will determine where we go next with our relationship. And that's what's called the wall of conflict right there. This level of conversation is a critical point, because if Chris and I have a conversation, we have facts about each other, we're establishing, I kind of like him, he seems a really nice guy, we're having friendship talks, he likes the Patriots, and I like the Patriots. I don't know if that's true about you, Chris, but I like you, so I'm not going to ask you. So we're going to walk through, and then we start talking about politics. Religion. We start now getting to a point where I'm sharing more of myself, taking a risk of how Chris will respond. And Chris is sharing. So if Chris is says to me, well, I won't even say what party, because, to say, well, I voted for so-and-so, all right? Now, we've come to a point of conflict if I voted for someone else. Now, if I start treating Chris differently because who he voted on, we come into a wall of conflict, or I say something like, that's so stupid. How could you vote for that person? You must be one of them, fill in the blank. Now, Chris is going, I can't trust Kevin with certain opinions and perspectives. I took a risk, and he made me feel stupid. He did not impart grace to me. He did not impart life to me. He couldn't, even in the midst of disagreement, honor who I am, and maybe not agree with my opinion and perspective on certain things, but he honored me as a person. And if he doesn't feel that I'm still honoring of, even in disagreement in that way, he'll go back to level 2, if not level 1. In our current culture, you get canceled, done. We can't move past the wall of conflict. And if we can't learn how to move past the wall of conflict, we will stifle our ability to actually get close. And it's really sad in church circles that the biggest thing that should be the platform of our lives is our love and relationship with Christ, to love God and to love others, to love our neighbor as ourselves, until they start sharing their perspective on fill in the blank. And so we can worship Jesus together standing next to each other. But if you share who you voted for, or you can share your political perspective, or you share those things, and now we come into conflict and we can no longer worship together in unity, something's wrong. Doesn't mean we should agree on everything. That's not unity. Harmony is when we can have differing perspectives and still live in unity together and honor each other before the Lord. Well, Kevin, what about theology? even in theology, that I might vehemently disagree with you about something in Scripture. But if it causes me to disconnect my heart from you, right off the bat, just because we have a disagreement, we're in trouble. And so if we can get through the wall of conflict, if we can trust that when we have conflict, and those are big things, I know, I get it in our world, but we've got to model this because our world isn't. Cancel culture will kill community. And we've got to learn how to walk this out together. So, but if we have a disagreement, Carrie and I have been married for a long time. And can I tell you, it's our ability not only to have level 1s and 2s conversation, which we still have after all these years, but it's when we come to opinions, when we come to perspectives, we have to learn how to work through them when we're in disagreement, whether it's something as simple as what color to paint the bathroom, or it's something important as where's God called us to live. If it's something simple about what to watch on TV, or something important about how we spend our money and give our money away. We have learned to deal with this wall of conflict that even when we're in disagreement, we have to be able to love and honor each other because there are deeper levels of relationship. And if you can't move through and you can't learn how to communicate through the wall of conflict, you'll always be going backwards in your deep depth of relationship and health. Make sense? Okay. Next one, next level. Level 4 is feelings. That if I can share perspectives and opinions on certain things, and now you've shown that even in a disagreement, that you can be trusted with me and information about myself, facts about myself, difference of opinions, then I can maybe start sharing feelings, dreams, and hopes that I have. That I can share with you that, hey, sometimes our difference of opinion makes me scared. It makes me insecure. I'm worried that if we disagree about this, then we're going to lose a relationship. I'm angry right now. What happened? Or I'm incredibly joyful. Or I want to express my feelings to you even as a friend. You're a great friend. I think you're amazing. I think, does that make sense? You're starting to share more of yourself from the deeper levels of yourself. You're sharing your feelings. And if someone then doesn't respond well to your feelings, that's a wall of conflict, which will go back to facts or cliches. Make sense? Feelings. We were created to have this level of friendship with each other. And can I say, I've really seen this more and more. Some of the really bad romantic relationships I see people entrenched with is because they have a need for friendship, and we don't know how to be close friends and share our feelings and our hopes and our dreams. So then let me find a boyfriend or a girlfriend to share those things, because our world models really poorly romantic relationships and intimacy, but at least it's a model, or we've seen that with other people. And so our heart's cry is actually for friendship, but we get entrenched in romance because we don't know how to share our feelings with our friends. True? Feelings. Okay. Sorry, we could spend more time. Let's go to the next one. And the last one is needs. Needs are the deepest part of who we are. To share with someone our deep needs, our felt needs. Did I share that this came from Gary Smalley? Okay, good. I just don't like stealing credit. Anyways, these are the things that I can go, not only can I share my feelings with you, my opinions with you, my facts with you, but I can share some needs that I have. Some of those needs, maybe the depth of relationship is, maybe you can help meet those needs, and I can help meet your needs, which, by the way, we all have them. Remember the first verse? Necessary edification. That means we have a need for relationships that impart grace and life to our soul. God wired us to need each other. God wired us to live in community. God wired us that we can share our feelings and our needs and our opinions and our facts with each other in a way that demonstrates health and love and honor with each other. that our conversations are seasoned with grace in that way. And all of us, can I say, have a need to share the deepest needs of our heart and life. And to have other people, when we express those deep desires and needs, can say, I still love you and I value you and I'll walk with you and protect you. Every one of us has that need in our life. Can I encourage you, though, that the deepest needs of our life, the deepest, most intimate and close relationships you can have, in my experience after 40-something years of life, can only truly be met in the one that created you to have those needs, to find that attention and that affection and that life and edification and affirmation, mainly met through our relationship with God. And then learn how to do that with each other. Can I also say this? We have a God who knows every fact about you and still loves you. We have a God who sees all of your opinions, all of your perspectives, all of your views on truth. And through relationship, he values you to share those things with him. God loves it when you come to him and you share your feelings with him, even frustration, disappointment, discouragement, and anger. You ever read the Psalms? The psalmist is like, I'm going to share every feeling I've ever had with you. And our deepest desires and needs. If you want some homework, read through John chapter 4, where Jesus is speaking to the woman at the well, and take these 5 levels and see where Jesus meets all of those needs in her life in a brief conversation. We don't even have the whole conversation. And it starts with him asking her, will you give me a drink? He's saying, I'm thirsty, I have a need, and I'm actually putting my trust in you to meet even a physical need, which seems superficial. But he's starting by making himself vulnerable in relationship to her. It's a whole other conversation. All right, we're going to wrap this up. But I will say this. Some of you have been around church too much. That's a dangerous thing for a pastor to say. Kevin said, don't show up so much. Anyways, that's not what I'm saying. But often, and here's what I mean by that. Often some of us go, if you're going to have a relationship with God, you have to have levels 4s and 5s conversation. Band, you guys can come up. Can I tell you, Jesus cares about the small stuff. I won't say who it was because I haven't asked permission. But one of my friends said, Jesus asked me the other day, what do you think about Blake Griffin getting traded to the Nets? And he was like, what? You know why Jesus asked that question? Because Jesus knows he cares about that and wants to have a conversation about superficial facts, including who got traded to the Brooklyn Nets. And it also shows that God is really gracious that he cares about the Brooklyn Nets. But anyways, all that to say is this. When you develop a deeper relationship with Jesus, he loves to speak about the deepest needs of your heart. He wants to talk to you about your feelings. He wants to walk through your perspectives and opinions and bring them into alignment with his heart and truth. He also cares about the smallest facts, like the numbers of hair on your head. And sometimes he just wakes me up and says, good morning, Kevin. How are you doing? And if the God of the universe can meet me through every level of this conversation, then we can finally learn how to do this well together. So as we jump into a time of worship, maybe you could just start having a conversation with God. And maybe he's going to talk to you about the Brooklyn Nets, about what you're wearing today. Maybe he wants to go a little deeper. And maybe at some point you can also say, Jesus, where have I not let you pass through the wall of conflict in my own life? Where have I had broken trust? And it's time to trust you again. And where can we put these things into practice so we can be a people that doesn't reflect our culture, but we can lead our culture into healthy communication, healthy relationships, deep, deep, deep friendship with God and each other? Amen? Amen. Let's worship that God. Why don't you stand with me?